sometimes the right paths go immediately through the dark valleys. It's not a contrast right path or dark valley. It's a right paths which include dark valleys.
If the lights suddenly went out and your room was completely dark, would you still be able to find the door to get outside? Would you still be able to make your way to the kitchen for food and water? Would your bed still be accessible so that you could get some sleep? This life has a tendency of turning the lights out on us from time to time, alumni. But even when that happens, God's provision for us remains the same. It may be harder to see sometimes, but it is still there. Today, we're talking about persevering on the right path, even when it leads us through some dark, difficult valleys, and the hope that we possess while we do it. Welcome to After 4, your podcast for navigating life after graduation. I'm your host and guide, John Steele, and this one's for you, alumni. If we just leave it at perseverance, like obviously Jesus is talking about perseverance. This is really important. This is a big piece. For me, if I just leave it at perseverance, it becomes just a crushing weight for me. Or it becomes something that's like, I know I'm supposed to, but why or how? Like, how do I persevere in these times when I just don't understand how to function in this reality? Or what this new space expects of me, or what God expects of me in this new space. And that's where, for me, that's where hope comes in, where it's like, well, why is it that we are able to persevere? And it's because we have hope, this relentless, unending hope in Jesus that walks through difficulty with us and is right there with us. And this takes me, this is probably terrible. I know this is terrible Bible study, terrible preaching if we were preaching to go from one text to just a totally random different text. But this does take me to a different place that has been coming to my mind a number of times. And it's Psalm 23, yet again, another very common text. But I think about those verses 3 and 4 in particular of Psalm 23. And there is just such an interesting juxtaposition of ideas to me in those two verses. And because Psalm 23:3 is where he says that he guides me along paths of righteousness, or the right paths for his name's sake. And then the next thing that comes up, it just blows my mind, is that even though I walk through the darkest valley, or through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. That it talks about the paths of righteousness, and then the very next idea is walking through the valley of the shadow of death. I have to think that that's on purpose, that those two ideas are put next to each other, that right paths sometimes lead through the darkest valleys.
Yeah, I really appreciate that insight, John. That's a really beautiful insight, because I think that the juxtaposition that you're pointing out is not the one that is intuitive to us. He leads me on the right paths, which we think are the paths of sunshine and daffodils, and everything's easy, and you're gonna get all the things you want in the time you want, and everything's gonna be great. Those are the paths of righteousness, and yet sometimes the right paths go immediately through the dark valleys. And so, it's not a contrast right path or dark valley. It's a right paths which include dark valleys.
Yes.
And I think that's really a significant insight. One of the ideas that I wrestle with is, and one of the temptations for me is, I'm always tempted in my spiritual life and in my regular life to ignore the life I have for the life that I think I want.
Oh man, yes.
So I neglect the body I have in this view of the body I wish I had, or I neglect the work I have, caring for my home or finishing that project or whatever it is, because I'm fantasizing about this work would prefer to have or think I might want out there in the future.
Yeah.
And yet, the life of blessedness, the life of formation in Jesus is not the life that you think you want. It's the life you actually have. So
wow.
if you're an alumnus, if you're an InterVarsity alumnus and you're going through a period of loneliness, the path for you is not a path that of you're not going to start having your life together, your spiritual life together, when you're no longer lonely. You're going to this season of loneliness that you're in is a part of that path. And so it can form you in the way of life. And we have to, now it can also deform us. Hard things can form us, they can also deform us. So then the challenge is, what gives you the ability to hold onto the word, hold onto the way of Jesus in these moments, whether it's loneliness or a transition or disorientation or new questions or doubt or discouragement, or maybe you didn't get a job right away and you're just struggling with hope, struggling with the future and you're wrestling with, maybe you did get a job right away and you realize very quickly you hate doing the thing that you studied for 4 years. I mean, all these kinds of things, they're real things. They're real challenges, and they can be deeply, deeply disorienting. But it's not the life you think you want. That is the life that is going to form you, that's going to bring you the life and the fruitfulness in your life with God. It's the life that you have. And so how do we hang on? How do we follow? We hope. We have hope. We cultivate that sense of, even though I don't see it right now, even though I don't feel it right now, God is doing a work in me, preparing me, strengthening me for the life God has called me to. So, I mean, your listeners may know this. I wrote a book on loneliness. And I went through periods. I've gone through periods in my life of profound loneliness. And when you're in the midst of those seasons of loneliness and disorientation, you just feel like this is going to last forever. And it feels so painful and disorienting. And you wonder if God is there or God cares and all these questions. And yet, it was faithfulness in what I learned in those moments of loneliness that has allowed me to live into and press into moments of relational blessing. And so Sophia and I recently celebrated our 25th anniversary together, and we were just shaking our heads, saying, "Wow, Jesus's promise that if we give ourselves to him in his way, even if it's costly, relationally costly, that he will provide for us, and he'll provide a family for us, and he'll provide friends for us, he'll provide a community for us." We're just looking at each other going, I can't believe the thickness of this community that God has blessed us with. But it didn't always feel that way.
Right.
It didn't always look like that was going to be true. And so the hope is that Jesus is faithful, that the good shepherd, to go back to Psalm 23, the good shepherd knows how to take care of us, even when we're in the dark valley. But he doesn't lead us to the dark valley to abandon us in the dark valley. He leads us in the dark valley, through the dark valley, to get to what is on the other side. And so one question for us, if we're in a hard time, is how do we cultivate hope? One spiritual discipline that I did for a while was going through a really difficult period. There was some health stuff in my family, and I was just kind of overwhelmed by the emotions of it. And there was a spiritual discipline I did for a year, which was just simply to name my feelings. I am feeling sad. I am feeling afraid. I am feeling angry. I am feeling bitterness. I am feeling resentment. I am feeling whatever the feelings was. And then to pause and to say, and my feelings don't get to determine reality.
Yeah. Wow.
What is my reality according to Jesus, right? And that was a spiritual discipline for me, because the temptation for me was, I'm feeling resentful, therefore my life is terrible. And life is bad, and or I'm feeling lonely, therefore I'm unlovable. Or I'm feeling frustrated, and therefore there's something wrong with me, or somebody's treating me unfairly. But wait a minute, no, not necessarily. My feelings are telling me that there's something important going on in me.
Yes.
There's something that I value that feels threatened. There's something that I value that feels frustrated or incomplete at the moment. That's really useful information. But the reality is, even at my loneliest, I was still profoundly loved. Even in my most frustrated, I was still profoundly able to make a difference in my life and the lives of other people. And so that discipline of naming the feelings, but not allowing the feelings to dictate reality to me was a really meaningful spiritual discipline.
It's interesting that you put it that way, because as you're saying that, I can't help but wonder, is that actually what the psalmist is doing in Psalm 23? Like, does the psalmist find themselves in the dark valley right in this moment, but they have been recalling up to that point God's provision for them? Like, what I see, maybe I can't see anything because this is the darkest valley. So if I were to let that define my reality, there is nothing here. There is nothing good in my life. But I remember before I got here that I lacked nothing because of the shepherd, because he provided green pastures, he provided quiet waters, he refreshed my soul. And as he looks out for his own perfect, good, and upright name, he takes me in the right direction. Okay, now if all of that is true, then that means that if I pause for a second in the midst of this dark valley, maybe I can still hear that little bit of a babbling brook. That I can still remember how far I was from that stream that I was following just a while ago before I came into this dark valley. Or if I feel under my feet that, like, oh, there are still tufts of grass here for me to stay strong and healthy and to be able to keep going and to persist. And then not only does he do that, but the psalmist looks ahead and talks about the things that he trusts will happen. And I can't help but wonder if that practice that you're talking about right there is sort of taking stock of, this is how I feel. I feel like I'm in the darkest valley and that there's nothing good around me. But is that actually true if I stop for a minute to take stock of what has happened and what I trust is going to happen, and that there is a righteous path that leads me between those two things? And so what does it look like for me to keep walking one step at a time on this path until I can see a little bit better, until the dark isn't quite so dark anymore?
Yeah, John, I really love that. That's a really beautiful, beautiful insight. Other people have pointed out to me, and I'm sure to you, the Psalms give us such a diversity of human emotion and experience, right?
Yeah.
Psalm 23 is, the Lord is my shepherd, I want for nothing. Psalm 22 begins, my God, why have you forgotten me? Right?
Right.
and so there's just that rich tapestry of human experience.
Yes.
That we get to bring all of it to God. But I love that. I love that imaginative exercise. Imagine you're in the dark valley. What can you remember about God's provision in the past? And what
Yeah.
can you look forward to about where God is taking you?
Yeah.
That's so helpful and so true. I mean, to make it practical in my own life, every time I am tempted to worry about money and think, oh my gosh, this is up to me. I don't know how we're going to do this. We're just going to, and the weight of that begins to settle, and the fear begins to overwhelm. It's been amazing to go, well, wait a minute. God is always taking care of me. That doesn't mean that there's never been difficult seasons. There have been lean seasons, and yet God took care of me in the lean season. And if God took care of me during that lean season, God will take care of me in this lean season.
Yes.
If it even is going to be a lean season. And if God has been faithful to me in the past, of course God will be faithful to me in the future. God took care of me as a freshman. And actually, beyond that, he helped me connect to a community that helped me grow in my faith. And God provided for me. And if God provided for me then, God is faithful. God can provide for me now. And so what do I do now? Now I take what's mine, and I now approach it differently. I'm not under the weight and stress and anxiety of those things. I'm free to make deliberate choices about how I'm going to respond budget wise, and what I'm going to do to what my options are, and how I'm going to do that. I'm going to hold this vulnerability. And so learning to hold vulnerability is one of the things that recent alumni get to do. Is they get to learn how to hold ambiguity in this season of life. And if you're able to learn to hold that as people of hope, gosh, what a beautiful thing. Because my observation is that a lot of people can't hold ambiguity and look to escape it in any way that they can. So by distracting themselves, by taking on habits to distract themselves, or to numb their the distress, the ambiguity, the difficulty. But boy, what we need are women and men siblings who can go, yeah, this is really uncomfortable right now. Huh. I wonder what God's doing.
Yeah, right.
I wonder how God is going to be at work. I wonder what I need to be doing. I wonder who I need to be connected to in this season. Can help me. And boy, if you are that person in your workplace, in your apartment complex, in your community, you will make a difference to the people around you. People will see, wow, John is really different than the other people around here. He's living differently. He's living with he's not oblivious to the challenges, but he's living with a kind of ease that's really attractive. So
yeah. Something that you just said right there really stands out to me. The asking that question, like, what is God doing right now? And I look back on difficult times in my life that I've asked that question, like sort of with a balled up fist of like, God, what are you doing? And instead, I wonder what it would look like to approach those moments, asking the same question but with a different tone, of being like, there's something really difficult and confusing going on right now. I wonder what God's up to. Like to almost view it as a turning point, or one of these like something is in the works right now, and I wonder, where is it that God is wanting me to lean in? To feel your feelings. If you feel scared and sad and angry, feel them. Once like Psalm 22, feel Psalm 22. Like, that's fine. But then what does it look like to say, like, okay, yeah, I'm frustrated, I'm scared, I'm anxious, I don't know what to think, but is it possible that this feels so uncomfortable and out of place because there is a shift coming, or there's something that God wants to get my attention about? Or is there just a way that if I stop and open my eyes a little bit wider for a little bit longer, that I will see God at work, and that will give me some fresh perspective, and not necessarily that God's like, I'm going to make this hard until you pay attention to me. That's not what I mean, but because I'm paying attention and I'm starting to see places where God's at work, that helps me weather the storm for however long the storm is going to be. I'm going to keep watching and celebrating the fact that God is at work. And Jason, I know that you prepared a couple of things for our alumni, like a practical next step. So it's in the form of examens. And so can you just, like, we can send alumni to go take a look at those things. We'll put links in the show notes, but can you just give like a brief, we talked about examens in an earlier episode. So if people have listened to that episode, they have a bit of an introduction to what doing an examen is like, but can you give us just a bit of an insight into, this is the examen, this is why I would commend you to consider doing an examen, and just a little bit about the different versions that you brought for our alumni today?
Yeah, great question. Can I one caveat in
yes
about the examen is, and about all this stuff that we're thinking about, perseverance and hope. The temptation can always be to think all or nothing. Right? I've got to be a person of hope 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Or else I'm not doing it at all. I've got to persevere with everything. And if I feel like giving up and watching Netflix and eating pepperoni pizza and just, whatever, if that's what if that's where I am, I find myself there, I failed. There's something wrong.
Yeah.
And I think
you're describing a lot of my life, Jason, right now.
and what I want to say is, part of the wisdom of an examen is that all or nothing, that kind of all or nothing vision of what it means to grow spiritually, is not necessarily helpful to us in all of our stages of life. That if we can just get maybe 10%, 20%, 30% more hopeful in the next season of life.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, if we can cultivate a little more awareness of how we're feeling and whether or not our feelings are telling us the truth or are distorting the truth, and what it might be like to be free to respond to God in truth. Like, if we get a little bit more, then over time, that's the thing that really transforms us. It's not those times when I just feel like everything is 100. It's all in or hot or cold. It's that, let's get a little bit better. Get a little bit better. Let's get a little bit more perspective. And so what examens do is they are a time of noticing our life with God in a way that helps us get a little bit better at participating with God tomorrow. Right?
Yeah.
So the whole point of an examen is that they are meant to be short reflections that happen at the end of our day, that they encourage us to review what's happening, what has happened in the presence of the Lord without judgment, without beating ourselves up, to bring resolution to those things, and to let them go, and then to begin to think about, okay, given this new perspective where I am, what's one small way I can participate a little bit more freely, a little bit more fully with what God is doing. And so in the show notes, you'll see this, but I've created 3 different examines. They should take 15 minutes, 12 to 15 minutes to do. They are a practice of just settling down, paying attention, and reflecting with Jesus on my day and on my life, but then also on God's word. And asking the question, okay, what's one thing I can do? What's a small step I can do? We did 3 of them because we recognize that all of our listeners are in one of 3 contexts. Either you're in an experience where you're in the valley of darkness and it's hard right now and it feels overwhelming and you're in that space. And if you're in that space, the thing to know is that you are seen. God is there with you. God's with you in that space. And you've got other people who've gone through that space ahead of you. You're not alone. And you're loved and you're seen and you're valued. And so there's a particular examine just for you. And then there's folks who maybe you have been in a space like that, but you actually are beginning to see some light. You are climbing out of it. I wonder if people who are really in the darkest pit will even listen to a podcast like this, and so maybe you don't relate to the being in the pit because you sort of feel like, okay, I know what that was like. And now I feel like I'm coming out of it. And so what do you do? How do you pay attention? How do you nurture that? How do you take, what's a small step that you could take? And then there's some people who are like, nah, I'm good. This is, I'm right. I'm doing good. I'm feeling good about my life. And the question for you, if you're in that context, is, okay, great, wonderful, thanks be to God. How do you be prepared for this season of blessing to end?
Yeah.
Because it will. And how can we will, it's never a bad time of year. It's never bad to pay attention to what's going on under the surface of my life. How are my roots going deep into God's word? How am I holding things so that when the dark times come, the difficult times come, the times of transition comes, I will be able to persevere in hope because I'm cultivating that now.
Yes. I'm really grateful for those, and I'm also really grateful for the encouragement that these are small steps in a direction, that the win here is taking a step forward. It's not getting it 100% on try number 1. It's not getting 100% on try 1000. It's like no, this is the win is dedicating myself to a process over time. And I think also, for me at least, one of the things that I struggle with is saying, once I get this right, I will get to the presence of God. I will get to the place where God is waiting for me, instead of saying, God is on this journey with me. And so what does it look like for me to invite Jesus in? Like, Jesus, will you join me in this process of examine? And even this right here, would this be a relational experience as I sit down and do this for 15 minutes at the end of every day? And as I get better, as I get more aware of the ways that I have met God, the consolations, the desolations kinds of things, as I get more aware of those kinds of things, the other thing that's happening in that process is that I am just I am consciously noticing that here in this moment, I'm spending time with you and that you are going through this with me. Like those feel like the wins that I think we want to invite our alumni into in this process, is like one step at a time, and just invite Jesus into the process with you. You're not trying to get to him. He's already right there. It's just bring your awareness to that as you do this practice.
Yeah. Jesus was not more present to you on campus in your small group Bible study than he is present to you in this season of your life. the invitation to be people who hear his word and hold it and do it, it's the same. And Jesus' commitment to love, forgive, and shape you as a person of his way is the same. So whether you're in wherever you are, you don't have to do work to get to God. The good news of the gospel is God has come to you, and God's power and presence is with you. And perhaps especially when it's hard to feel, it's hard to sense, it's hard to know. There is the presence of God is not something that we have to get to. It's something we can't escape from.
Yeah.
And there's something maturing in our faith, in our life, when we can bring to God the truth that is in us, not the feelings we think ought to be in us, and trust that Jesus is here in the midst of it.
Alumni, there is hope. Even when it feels like you're wandering through the darkest valley, remember that the Good Shepherd is guiding you. He may be harder to see from time to time, but rest assured that he is walking ahead of you and that he protects and provides for you all the same. There is hope. If you'd enjoy using one of those examine guides that Jason mentioned, DM the word examine to After4Pod on Instagram, and we will make sure you get a copy. Check the show notes for a link to our Instagram account. So we were going to take a short break next week, but I felt like you might enjoy one more encouragement in this conversation around faith transition after graduation. A couple years ago, I got to chat with Jay Kim, a pastor and author of the book Analog Christian: Cultivating Contentment, Resilience, and Wisdom in the Digital Age. And our conversation around joy and being anchored in God's goodness felt like a really great complement to some of what we've been talking about with Jason these last couple weeks. So I'm going to share that conversation with you next week. Then we'll think about a short summer break. Until then, consider sharing this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and I will see you in the after, alumni. Thanks for listening to After 4. This podcast is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Zentera, edited by Caleb Leppert, and our After 4 theme music was written and performed by John Steele.